You're in no contact with an avoidant, and it feels like you're floating in a strange kind of emotional limbo. Every day seems to bring a new question. Do they even notice that you're gone? Are they relieved? Do they secretly miss you? Are they waiting for you to reach out first? Or have they already moved on without a second thought? When someone with an avoidant attachment style disappears or accepts distance without much visible emotion, it's easy to assume they simply don't care. From the outside, they often appear calm, independent, and unaffected. They rarely advertise their emotions, and they don't usually respond to separation in dramatic ways. That can leave the other person feeling invisible, wondering if the relationship meant anything at all. But what happens internally is often much more complicated than what you can see. Avoidants frequently carry unspoken expectations during periods of no contact. They may never voice those expectations, and in many cases they aren't fully aware of them themselves. Yet those expectations influence how they interpret your silence, your absence, and your choices. Understanding this isn't about trying to manipulate an avoidant into coming back. It isn't about playing psychological games or making someone chase you. It's about understanding the emotional dynamics that unfold when two people stop interacting, so you can stop making decisions based on anxiety and start making them from a place of clarity. The first thing many avoidants quietly expect during no contact is that you won't actually stay away. This expectation isn't always conscious. It's built from previous experiences where distance eventually ended with someone reaching out first. Maybe past partners repeatedly broke the silence. Maybe family members always returned after conflict. Maybe they learned over time that people eventually chase them, reassure them, and restore the connection. As a result, your silence can initially feel temporary in their mind. They assume you'll text. They assume you'll call. They assume you'll eventually ask what's wrong. They assume your discomfort with the silence will outweigh your commitment to your own boundaries. But something interesting happens when it doesn't. As the days pass and your message never arrives, certainty slowly gives way to curiosity. Curiosity becomes uncertainty. Uncertainty becomes reflection. That doesn't necessarily mean they'll immediately contact you. Every avoidant responds differently. Some become more emotionally aware, others become even more withdrawn. But genuine, consistent silence often creates space for thoughts that constant communication never allowed. The second expectation many avoidants carry is that you'll remain emotionally available even while you're apart. Think about what often happens after previous arguments or periods of distance. Perhaps they disappeared for several days. Then they returned as though nothing had happened. Maybe they sent a casual message. Maybe they acted playful. Maybe they ignored the previous conflict entirely. And because you wanted peace, you accepted it. Over time, that pattern teaches them something. No matter how much distance they create, the emotional door remains open. No contact changes that. For the first time, they experience uncertainty about your emotional availability. You're no longer immediately accessible. You're no longer responding within minutes. You're no longer organizing your emotional life around their unpredictable presence. That uncertainty can feel unfamiliar, not necessarily because they've suddenly become overwhelmed with romantic longing, but because the dynamic itself has changed. You're no longer participating in the same dance. The third expectation is perhaps the most misunderstood. Many avoidants expect you to remain exactly where they left you. This doesn't always come from arrogance. Often it comes from emotional habit. They become accustomed to relationships that pause instead of ending. People wait, people forgive, people stay emotionally invested, so they subconsciously assume time stands still. Meanwhile, your life continues. You heal, you develop new routines. You reconnect with friends, you discover interests that have nothing to do with the relationship. You begin remembering who you were before constant uncertainty consumed your thoughts. This is one of the most powerful aspects of genuine no contact. Its primary purpose isn't to make someone miss you. Its purpose is to help you rediscover yourself. When your attention shifts away from monitoring another person's emotional availability, you suddenly have room to invest that energy back into your own life. Little by little, your confidence returns. You laugh more easily. You sleep better. You stop checking your phone every few minutes. You stop interpreting every social media post as a hidden message. You begin living instead of waiting. Ironically, this is often the version of you that felt most attractive at the beginning of the relationship, not because you were trying to impress anyone, because you were fully connected to yourself. Another expectation avoidants sometimes carry is that you'll continue proving your love by chasing them. Many people mistakenly believe that persistence always demonstrates love. But in anxious avoidant dynamics, endless pursuit can unintentionally reinforce unhealthy patterns. Every time you chase after someone who consistently withdraws, you communicate something without realizing it. You teach them that distance requires no accountability. You teach them that they can disappear and still expect emotional reassurance. You teach them that your boundaries are flexible whenever they decide to return. Healthy love doesn't require endless pursuit. Healthy relationships involve mutual effort, mutual communication, mutual responsibility, mutual repair after conflict. When only one person constantly carries the emotional labor of reconnecting, the relationship gradually becomes unbalanced. No contact interrupts that imbalance. It asks an important question. What happens when both people become equally responsible for maintaining connection? Sometimes the answer is encouraging. Sometimes the other person reaches out sincerely, acknowledges previous patterns, and demonstrates genuine willingness to grow. Other times, nothing changes, and painful as that may be, it provides clarity that constant chasing never could. Another reality worth understanding is that avoidants often process emotions on a delayed timeline. This is something many people misunderstand. During the immediate aftermath of a breakup or separation, an avoidant may appear surprisingly calm. They focus on work, they stay busy, they distract themselves, they convince themselves they're fine. But emotional processing doesn't always disappear simply because it isn't visible. For some avoidants, emotions surface much later, after daily routines settle and distractions lose their effectiveness. That delay often confuses former partners. They wonder why someone suddenly reaches out months later after appearing completely unaffected. Again, this isn't universal, and it doesn't happen in every case. People are individuals, not stereotypes. But delayed emotional awareness is a pattern that many attachment researchers and therapists have observed in some avoidantly attached individuals. The important point is this: whether they process their feelings today, 3 months from now, or never, your healing cannot depend on their emotional timeline. If your recovery waits for their realization, you've handed control of your life back to them. Real healing begins when you stop measuring your progress by someone else's emotional awakening. There's another hidden expectation that often exists beneath the surface. Many avoidants quietly assume you'll eventually become frustrated enough to criticize them. Why? Because criticism feels familiar. Conflict feels predictable. If they grew up expecting disappointment or emotional rejection, they may unconsciously anticipate those same experiences in adult relationships. So they wait. They expect angry messages, accusations, attempts to force conversations, emotional explosions. When those reactions don't come, something changes. Not because silence punishes them, because calm consistency breaks an old pattern. You demonstrate something different. You show that respecting yourself doesn't require attacking someone else. You can leave quietly. You can protect your peace without creating unnecessary drama. That kind of emotional maturity often speaks louder than hundreds of emotional arguments. Perhaps the biggest transformation during no contact has very little to do with the avoidant at all. It happens inside you. At first, no contact feels unbearable because your mind is still focused outward. What are they thinking? What are they doing? Who are they with? Will they come back? Every question revolves around them. Then, slowly, the questions begin changing. What do I actually need? Why was I willing to accept inconsistency for so long? What kind of relationship makes me feel emotionally safe? What boundaries do I want moving forward? Those questions are life-changing because they're finally about you. Many people enter no contact hoping it will change another person. The healthiest outcome is that it changes you. It teaches patience. It strengthens emotional independence. It helps you separate love from anxiety. It reminds you that genuine connection doesn't require constant guessing games. It reveals that peace is not found in endlessly decoding mixed signals, but in choosing relationships where care, respect, and communication are expressed consistently. If an avoidant eventually reaches out, you'll be in a much stronger position to evaluate their actions objectively. Are they taking responsibility? Have their behaviors changed? Are they communicating openly? Are they showing consistency over time? Or are they simply hoping to resume the same cycle that existed before? Those questions matter far more than whether they text first. Because reconciliation without meaningful change almost always recreates familiar pain. And if they never return, your growth still remains. Your confidence still remains. Your boundaries still remain. Your self-respect still remains. That's why genuine no contact is never about winning someone back. It's about refusing to lose yourself while waiting for someone else to decide what they want. Giving an avoidant genuine space during no contact goes far deeper than simply not texting them or pretending you're unbothered. It's choosing not to interrupt their process. It's choosing not to rescue them from the consequences of emotional distance. It's choosing not to sacrifice your own well-being in exchange for temporary reassurance. Most importantly, it's giving yourself the same space you've spent so long giving everyone else. Because while you're wondering whether they notice your absence, the more important question quietly waits beneath the surface. Have you finally begun noticing yourself again? The moment that answer becomes yes, no contact has already accomplished its greatest purpose. Not because it changed them, because it changed the relationship you have with yourself. And that is the kind of transformation no one can ever take away from you. It's an internal transformation, one that demands you disengage not just on the surface, but all the way down. A lot of people treat no contact like a waiting game, where they go quiet outwardly, but are secretly hoping their silence gets noticed and missed. The problem is, avoidants have an almost uncanny ability to sense when something isn't authentic. If part of you is still tangled up in them, still checking their social media, still rehearsing imaginary conversations in your head, still posting things hoping for a reaction, they will pick up on it. And once they do, the entire point of the exercise falls apart. True space isn't just about withholding words, it's about withdrawing your energy entirely. Avoidants distance themselves because closeness feels suffocating to them, and their gut reaction to that discomfort is to retreat. If you're still hovering there emotionally, even quietly, even from far away, they never actually get the breathing room their nervous system is craving. But here's the strange twist in all of this. It's precisely when you fully release your grip that they start to feel your absence weighing on them. This isn't about getting revenge or manufacturing some game to make them chase you. It's about restoring your own inner balance so their silence stops having power over your emotions. Picture it this way. If someone has grown used to you always being the one who breaks the silence, who reaches out first after an argument, who lingers somewhere in the background of their life no matter what, they never actually have to sit with what life looks like without you in it. But the moment you vanish, not through some dramatic exit, not through anger, just a clean, complete withdrawal, it leaves behind a void, and nature has a way of resisting emptiness. Avoidants may not immediately spiral into panic. In fact, at first, they might even feel a sense of relief. But as time passes, if you don't resurface on their terms, doubt starts creeping in. Why haven't they come after me? Are they actually moving forward without me? That's the moment you start taking up more space in their thoughts than before. Consistency is everything here. The instant you break no contact out of anxiety or loneliness, you effectively reset the entire process back to square one. Avoidants are watchful, and they notice patterns, especially ones that repeat. If they see that your resolve tends to collapse after a few weeks, they learn something important. All they have to do is outlast you. But when you hold true distance, no messages, no conveniently timed run-ins, no liking their posts, you force them to face a new reality, one where you're no longer circling their orbit. That's the exact moment things start to shift. This isn't about manipulating anyone. It's about self-respect. Real space means you've stopped waiting around for them to transform into someone new. You've stopped mentally scripting what you'll say the moment they finally reach out. You're simply living your life as though their presence or their absence has no bearing on your happiness. The single most impactful thing you can do during no contact isn't disappearing quietly, it's visibly flourishing while you're gone. Avoidants seem to have an internal radar tuned specifically to authenticity. If they sense that you're only pretending to have moved on while secretly still aching for them, it actually feeds their avoidance even more. But when your energy genuinely shifts toward building a life that lights you up, something happens that they can't ignore. A kind of psychological tension builds inside them. This isn't about staging happiness for social media or performing contentment for an audience. Avoidants can smell that kind of desperation instantly. What actually gets under their skin is when your personal growth looks effortless, when they realize you're not just staying busy to cope, but that you're actually evolving as a person, with or without them. Maybe you pick up a new skill that changes the way you carry yourself in the world. Maybe you invest more deeply in friendships you'd been neglecting. Maybe there's a new, quiet self-assurance in you now, one that no longer depends on their approval. These small, subtle shifts register on a deep, almost primal level, triggering something psychologists refer to as loss aversion, that uneasy feeling of potentially losing access to someone who's becoming more valuable over time. There's an important nuance worth pointing out here. Avoidants generally don't respond to obvious performative displays of success. Posting gym photos or flaunting a jam-packed social calendar tends to backfire because it reads as trying too hard. What actually resonates is quiet, organic transformation, changes so natural they seem to suggest you're not thinking about them at all anymore. When mutual friends casually mention how happy you seem lately, when people notice you've picked up new interests, when they see you handling stress with a strength you didn't have before, it chips away at the story they've told themselves, that you couldn't function without them. This creates a fascinating kind of paradox. The more you commit to real, authentic personal growth, not as some calculated strategy to win them back, but because you genuinely deserve to grow, the more it activates something in their attachment system. Avoidants tend to be subconsciously drawn to people who display secure attachment traits, emotional steadiness, clear boundaries, and the capacity to self-soothe. These quiet observations pile up over time until the avoidant is forced to confront an uncomfortable realization. The person they once took for granted is becoming someone they might actually have to work to keep. And that shift, when it comes from genuine internal change rather than a calculated performance, is what makes all the difference. Avoidants live in the tension between two competing fears, an intense fear of being engulfed and an equally powerful terror of being abandoned. The goal isn't to trigger full-blown abandonment panic through dramatic disappearing acts, but rather to create what psychologists describe as optimal frustration, just enough distance for them to genuinely miss you, while leaving just enough presence to keep them from fully checking out emotionally. This is exactly why people who approach no contact with calm, graceful indifference tend to see far better outcomes than those who either chase relentlessly or freeze the avoidant out entirely. The real skill here is learning to be like the horizon, always visible somewhere in the distance, yet never something they can actually reach and grasp. Think about how avoidants process closeness and connection. While anxious types tend to fixate on maintaining constant contact, avoidants are quietly scanning for signs of independence in the people they're involved with. If you cut off all contact abruptly while radiating resentment or bitterness, they mentally file you under needy and move on. But if you pull back with a sense of quiet, grounded confidence, maybe occasionally crossing paths in neutral social settings without any emotional charge attached, it completely disrupts what they were expecting. They're bracing for either desperate pursuit or angry withdrawal. What actually throws them off balance is calm, self-assured distance. There's a critical nuance in how you respond if and when they eventually reach out. Most people sabotage their own no contact by either flat out ignoring the message, which comes across as punishing, or responding with an outpouring of enthusiasm, which feels overwhelming and suffocating to them. The sweet spot lies somewhere in between, a response that's warm but brief, one that conveys emotional steadiness without promising any future availability. Something as simple as, "Good to hear from you, hope you're doing well," communicates that you're unbothered by their absence and quietly plants a seed of doubt about how much control they actually thought they had over the dynamic. This measured, balanced approach forces them to sit with an uncomfortable question. If I want more from this, will I actually have to be the one to step forward? What makes this approach so effective is that it essentially mirrors their own behavior back at them, while allowing you to maintain the emotional high ground the entire time. You're not playing hard to get. You've simply become someone worth genuinely pursuing by refusing to chase and equally refusing to disappear forever. You create exactly the kind of tension that motivates avoidants to be the one to close the distance. They might not come rushing back right away, but you've fundamentally shifted the power dynamic in a way that stays with them long after the no contact period ends. The most transformative work you can do during this time isn't focused on changing their behavior at all. It's about rewiring your own attachment patterns. Avoidants seem to have an almost sixth sense for detecting anxious energy, and nothing repels them faster than sensing that someone else's emotional stability is riding on them. When you use this period of separation to genuinely address your own attachment wounds, it creates a shift that's noticeable even from a distance. This isn't about faking security, it's about developing enough self-awareness to recognize the moments when you're operating from fear instead of from a place of genuine love. Real attachment work goes far beyond surface-level coping mechanisms. It means digging into the childhood roots behind why abandonment hits you so hard. It involves practicing self-soothing until it becomes second nature, so you're no longer relying on an avoidant partner to regulate your emotional state for you. When you start setting boundaries, not as a form of punishment, but as an act of genuine self-respect, something shifts. You start emitting a completely different kind of energy. Avoidants might not consciously understand why they suddenly feel drawn back in, but on some deeper level, they sense when a person has stopped seeking their validation as a way to feel whole. Here's the irony in all of it. Avoidants are frequently most drawn to partners who don't desperately need them. As you grow more secure within yourself, you naturally stop displaying the anxious behaviors that fuel their avoidance in the first place. The constant overanalyzing, the emotional bids for reassurance, the subtle attempts to steer the pace of the relationship. Instead, you begin cultivating what psychologists call quiet confidence, an inner certainty that you'll be okay no matter what choice they make. This kind of security, paradoxically, makes you more magnetic, not because you're playing some strategic game, but because you've genuinely become someone who values their own peace over chaotic attachment patterns. This transformation shows up in small but meaningful ways. Maybe you stop over-explaining yourself in every text message. Maybe you stop rushing to fill every silence with words. Maybe you actually start to enjoy your own company instead of just tolerating it while you wait for them to come back around. These shifts register with an avoidant on a subconscious level. They can feel it when someone has stopped orbiting them as their emotional center, and that shift opens up space for something extraordinary, the very real possibility that they might have to actually step up if they want to remain part of your life. The beautiful part of all this is that as you heal your own attachment wounds, you stop needing this whole approach to work in the first place. You start to recognize that real, secure love shouldn't require constant emotional gymnastics just to maintain. Whether your avoidant ex comes back or not becomes far less important than the deeper discovery that you're capable of generating your own sense of emotional security. And that realization, more than any tactic or clever strategy, is what genuinely transforms every relationship you have moving forward, not just this one. The final psychological shift happens when you stop broadcasting your emotional state altogether and instead become the puzzle they can't quite solve. Avoidants are used to being the mysterious ones in relationships, the partners who keep their cards close while their anxious counterparts wear every feeling openly. But when you flip that dynamic by maintaining a composed, ambiguous stance about your own feelings, it completely disrupts how they perceive the balance of power in the relationship. Again, this isn't about mind games, it's about reclaiming ownership over your emotional world in a way that naturally stirs their curiosity and pushes them toward genuine self-reflection. Most people mess up no contact by either broadcasting their heartbreak through sad social media posts or venting to mutual friends, or by overcorrecting with forced, exaggerated displays of happiness. Both approaches give the avoidant a clear, comfortable read on exactly where you stand, which lets them mentally file you away and move on with certainty. The far more effective middle path is what relationship experts call strategic ambiguity. This isn't about lying regarding your feelings, it's simply about keeping them private. When an avoidant genuinely can't tell whether you're still hurting or have fully moved forward, when there are no clear signals to latch onto, it creates a kind of cognitive dissonance that occupies far more of their mental space than any dramatic gesture ever could. This works precisely because avoidants, despite their reputation for emotional distance, are actually extremely tuned in to shifts in relational patterns. They notice the moment you stop reacting to their usual push and pull behavior, the moment your social media stops telling a story that revolves around them, the moment mutual friends can no longer report back on how you're really feeling. The absence of information itself becomes its own kind of information. They start wondering, are they seeing someone new? Have they genuinely stopped caring? Do I still have any real influence over how they feel? These lingering, unanswered questions create what psychologists call the Zeigarnik effect, the phenomenon where unfinished situations and unresolved chapters occupy far more mental real estate than the ones that feel fully closed. The key to making this work is rooted in authentic emotional independence rather than performance. When you actually reach a place where you no longer need them to understand how you feel, when you're no longer invested in shaping their perception of your emotional state, that's when the real shift happens. Avoidants have a remarkable ability to sense the difference between performed indifference and true inner security. The latter is what genuinely intrigues them, because it suggests you've become someone who can't be pulled back in by their usual push-pull patterns. It challenges their deep-seated subconscious belief that they control the emotional temperature of the relationship. As this unfolds, something remarkable starts to happen. The avoidant begins to experience the very vulnerability they've spent so long avoiding. Without any clear signals about how you feel, they're left to sit with uncertainty, the exact discomfort they've usually been the one dishing out to others. This role reversal often becomes the spark for genuine self-reflection, opening the door for real change if they ever choose to re-engage. But by the time you reach this point, you may find you've already outgrown the need for their validation entirely, and that in itself is the real victory of the whole no-contact journey. So here's the honest truth about going no contact with an avoidant. It was never really about waiting for them to change. It was always about you changing, how you see yourself, how firmly you hold your boundaries, and what you finally decide you're no longer willing to accept. Whether they ever come back into your life or not, you come out ahead either way, because either they rise to meet the new version of you, or you create space for something even better to enter your life. And that's not just closure, that's real freedom.